A young man made a choice that shocked everyone. A rich older woman opened her heart to the unthinkable. But in a world full of secrets and hidden motives, who will win and who will lose? What happens when love, money, and betrayal collide? Stay tuned because you are about to watch a story filled with deception, secret, money, and love. Hello, family. Welcome to Storytime Ederly. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories. Like and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thank you as you do. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Ethan Collins was only 25, but life had already beaten him down. After 4 long years of college in California, he was left with a diploma, a mountain of student debt, and no job. Every day he sent out resumes, and every day his phone stayed silent. His little apartment was falling apart, the ceiling leaked when it rained, and the heater made strange sounds in winter. Worse, he was 3 months behind on rent, and the landlord had started banging on his door twice a week, threatening eviction. Ethan would sit at night on his worn-out couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling a mix of anger and hopelessness. "I deserve better than this," he would tell himself. "I'm smart. I'm handsome. I just need a way out." But no matter how much he dreamed, reality stayed the same: cold, hungry, and poor. One evening, after eating another sad dinner of plain noodles, Ethan grabbed his old laptop and opened a dating site. Not because he wanted love. No. He wanted opportunity. He changed his profile settings to older women, something he never imagined he would do. But desperate times called for desperate moves. He scrolled past many profiles until one stopped him like a slap across the face. Victoria Dawson. Age: 55. Location: Beverly Hills, California. In her photos, she stood smiling beside a grand white mansion with tall golden gates. Another photo showed her riding a private yacht, champagne glass in hand, laughing as the wind played with her silver hair. Ethan clicked on her profile faster than he thought possible. She had written, "Looking for someone honest, loyal, and full of life. Age doesn't matter when 2 souls connect." Ethan laughed bitterly. Age doesn't matter? Maybe not when you have a mansion and a private jet, he thought. Deep inside, a wicked idea began to form. What if he could charm her? What if he could marry her? What if, just maybe, he could inherit all that luxury one day? The thought was wild, almost disgusting, but it burned inside him like a fire he couldn't put out. "She's lonely," Ethan thought. "I can be whatever she wants me to be, for a price." Without wasting another second, Ethan sent her a message. "Hello, Victoria. I couldn't help but notice your beautiful smile. I believe that true love has no age limit. I would love to get to know you." He hit send and leaned back on the couch, heart racing. He didn't know if she would even read it. Maybe she had hundreds of younger men messaging her. Minutes passed. Then, ping! A reply. "Hello, Ethan," she wrote. "Thank you for your sweet message. I believe the same. Would you like to meet for coffee?" Ethan stared at the screen, stunned. It had worked, faster than he ever imagined. But instead of feeling guilty, a dark grin spread across his face. "Poor old woman," he thought coldly. "She has no idea what's coming." Ethan didn't want love. He didn't want a future growing old beside her. He wanted her money. He wanted the mansion, the cars, the private island vacations. He wanted everything she had spent a lifetime building, and he was willing to sell his soul to get it. He quickly typed back, "I would love to meet you. Tomorrow?" Victoria responded with the name of an expensive cafe in Beverly Hills, the kind of place where coffee cost more than Ethan's groceries for a week. After setting the meeting, Ethan closed his laptop slowly, his mind spinning. He walked to the mirror hanging in the corner of his tiny apartment. He stared at himself, at the hungry, desperate young man looking back. He fixed his messy hair with his fingers, adjusted his cheap, wrinkled shirt. "Tomorrow," he whispered, eyes dark with ambition, "my new life begins." And deep in his heart, Ethan promised himself he would win her trust. He would marry her. He would take everything and not feel a single ounce of regret. At least, that's what he thought. He had no idea how much his heart and his life was about to change. The next morning, Ethan woke up early with a new kind of energy. Today was the day he would start changing his life. He opened the tiny closet in his bedroom and pulled out his only good outfit, a navy blue shirt and a pair of black jeans that still looked decent. He ironed them carefully, making sure not a single wrinkle remained. He even polished his old shoes until they shined. Looking in the mirror, Ethan gave himself a little pep talk. Smile warmly. Speak kindly. Look confident. Make her believe you're the one. He needed Victoria to trust him, to see him as the answer to her loneliness. He needed to play the role perfectly. At exactly 11 a.m., Ethan walked into the luxurious cafe Victoria had chosen. The place smelled of fresh coffee and sweet pastries. Tall glass walls let sunlight flood the marble floors, and waiters dressed in black and white uniforms moved smoothly between wealthy-looking customers. Ethan felt out of place immediately. His heart thudded painfully in his chest. Focus, he told himself. Fake it until you make it. Then he saw her. Victoria Dawson sat at a corner table by the window, wearing a pale pink suit and pearl earrings. She looked older than her photos, but there was something graceful about her. Her short silver hair was neatly styled, her makeup soft but flawless. She held a cup of coffee in her hand, her posture perfect. When her green eyes spotted Ethan, her whole face lit up in a genuine smile. Ethan walked toward her, forcing his nerves down. Victoria, he asked warmly. She stood up and extended her hand. You must be Ethan. It's so lovely to finally meet you, she said, her voice soft and welcoming. Ethan shook her hand firmly, giving her his most charming smile. The pleasure is all mine, he replied. They sat down, and a waiter appeared immediately to take Ethan's order. He ordered a coffee he couldn't even pronounce properly and tried to act like he belonged there. Victoria studied him carefully as he spoke about himself, his love for life, his dreams of traveling, and his search for real connection. Of course, most of it was carefully polished lies. In truth, Ethan wasn't interested in soulmates or sunsets on the beach. He was interested in bank accounts and designer suits. As Victoria talked about her life, how her husband had died 5 years ago, how she ran a few charities, how her giant mansion felt empty most nights, Ethan listened carefully, not because he cared, but because every piece of information was a weapon. She's lonely. She wants someone to care. I can give her that for a price, Ethan thought coldly. When Victoria mentioned she loved gardening, Ethan smiled brightly and said, I love gardens. There's something peaceful about growing things. In reality, Ethan hated dirt under his nails. But he nodded and listened, making himself look like the perfect, thoughtful young man. For 2 full hours, they talked, laughed, and shared stories. At the end of the meeting, Victoria leaned forward, her eyes shining with hope. I feel like I've known you forever, she said softly. Would you like to meet again soon? Ethan smiled gently, pretending to be touched. I would love that, he said. Inside his mind, however, darker thoughts swirled. Hook, line, and sinker, he thought. She's already falling. As he walked back to his beat-up car later, Ethan allowed himself a small, wicked smile. It's working, he whispered. Soon, the mansion, the cars, the life, it will all be mine. But what Ethan didn't realize was that in this dangerous game he was playing, he wasn't the only one with secrets. Victoria Dawson had lived long enough to know when someone was lying. She wasn't as blind as Ethan thought. She saw the hunger in his eyes, the way he carefully chose his words, the way he agreed too easily. And yet, she let it happen, because Victoria had her own reasons. Reasons that Ethan would soon discover. Very soon. The second meeting came faster than Ethan expected. 2 days later, Victoria invited him to her mansion for a casual lunch. Ethan almost couldn't believe it. He stood outside the grand golden gates, feeling tiny compared to the massive White House beyond them. A security guard checked his ID before letting him inside. Ethan drove his rusty old car slowly up the long, clean driveway, parking beside cars that probably cost more than his entire life savings. As he stepped out, He quickly checked his reflection in the car window. Hair neat. Shirt ironed. Smile ready. Showtime, he whispered to himself. The front door swung open, and there she was, Victoria, looking graceful in a simple blue dress and white sneakers. Surprisingly normal for a billionaire woman. Welcome, Ethan, she called, waving at him like an excited teenager. Ethan hurried up the steps, smiling as if his heart wasn't beating out of his chest. You have a beautiful home, he said sincerely.
And he meant it.
The place looked like a palace from a fairy tale. Victoria laughed lightly. Thank you. It's way too big for one old lady and a small dog. Just as she said that, a tiny white Pomeranian ran out from behind her and started barking at Ethan with all its little might. Ethan froze. The dog was no bigger than a soccer ball, but it barked like it wanted to tear him apart. This is Prince, Victoria said proudly. Don't worry, he's harmless mostly. Ethan forced a nervous laugh and bent down slowly. Hey there, buddy,
He said.
Prince answered by jumping up and trying to bite Ethan's shoelace. Victoria burst out laughing so hard that she had to hold onto the doorframe. I think he likes you, she joked. Yeah, he's about to eat me alive, Ethan thought grimly, but he kept smiling. Inside, the house was even more beautiful. Tall ceilings, crystal chandeliers, walls full of paintings that probably belonged in museums. Ethan tried not to look too impressed, but his wide eyes betrayed him. Victoria led him to a sunny backyard, where a small table was set with a fancy lunch, salads, sandwiches, fruits neatly arranged like an art project. They sat down, and for the first time, Ethan felt himself relax a little. Victoria was easy to talk to. She laughed at his jokes, asked questions about his dreams, and listened as if he were the most important man in the world. He had to admit, she wasn't boring. In fact, there was something sweet about the way she threw her head back when she laughed, or how she insisted he try the homemade lemonade because store-bought is for lazy people. At one point, while reaching for a sandwich, Ethan knocked over his glass of lemonade, sending it flying all over the white tablecloth. His face turned beet red. I'm so sorry, he gasped, grabbing napkins in a panic. Victoria laughed so hard, she nearly choked on her sandwich. Ethan, relax. It's just lemonade, not the Mona Lisa, she giggled. Ethan chuckled too, wiping the mess clumsily. Maybe pretending to like her won't be that hard after all, he thought. But deep inside, his darker plans remained. As the lunch ended, Victoria leaned back in her chair and looked at him with warm eyes. You know, she said thoughtfully, I don't have many people I trust around here. It gets lonely. Ethan leaned in, giving her his best sympathetic face. I believe people come into our lives for a reason, he said smoothly. In my case, he added with a little laugh, I'm just lucky or rich and have a cute dog. Victoria laughed again, wiping a tear from her eye. At least you're honest about one thing, she said playfully. But as she smiled, something flickered behind her eyes. Something Ethan didn't catch. A hidden amusement, as if she was in on a joke he didn't know about yet. After a short walk through her massive garden, Victoria offered him a small box. A little gift, she said sweetly. Ethan opened it and found a brand new expensive wristwatch inside, shiny, silver, and probably worth more than his car. He blinked in surprise. I can't accept this, he stammered, even though every greedy part of him wanted to snatch it up. Victoria simply smiled and placed it gently on his wrist. You're special, she said softly. And special people deserve special things. Ethan felt a strange flutter in his chest, but he quickly crushed it. Stay focused, he reminded himself. This is a business deal, not a fairy tale. As he drove home that evening, the expensive watch glittering on his wrist, Ethan couldn't stop grinning. It's happening, he whispered to himself. Soon, I'll have it all. But what Ethan didn't know was that Victoria's kindness wasn't blind. She was pulling him deeper, slowly but surely, into a trap he would never see coming. And by the time he realized it, it might be too late. The days that followed moved faster than Ethan expected. Victoria invited him over again and again. Sometimes for coffee. Sometimes for dinner. Sometimes just to sit in the garden and talk about nothing at all. Each time, Ethan played his role perfectly. Charming, caring, thoughtful. He knew how to make her laugh. He knew when to pretend he was shy. He knew when to compliment her cooking, her dress, her perfume. He was winning her heart, exactly as he had planned. But something strange started to happen. The more time Ethan spent with Victoria, the harder it became to remember he was pretending. She wasn't just some old rich woman anymore. She was funny. She was wise. She made silly jokes and laughed like a young girl. She listened to him like nobody else ever had. One afternoon, they sat by the pool, their feet dipped in the water. The sun was warm, and the air smelled of roses from Victoria's garden. Victoria turned to him suddenly and asked, "Ethan, what's your biggest dream?" Ethan opened his mouth to give the lie he had prepared, something about traveling the world or starting a small business. But instead, the truth came out before he could stop himself. "I just want to matter to someone," he said quietly. "I grew up being invisible. I guess I'm tired of it." Victoria looked at him with such softness that it made something inside Ethan twist painfully. "You matter," she said simply. For a long time, they just sat there in silence, watching the sunlight dance on the water. The next evening, something unexpected happened. Victoria hosted a small party at her mansion. Just a few of her close friends, other rich, powerful people with fancy clothes and expensive smiles. Ethan wore the new suit Victoria had bought him, a black designer suit that fit him perfectly. He looked like he belonged among them, even though deep inside, he felt like a poor boy wearing a borrowed crown. During the party, Victoria stayed close to him, introducing him proudly to everyone. "This is Ethan," she said to a group of ladies covered in jewelry. "He's very special to me." The ladies giggled and whispered behind their hands. Some gave Ethan sly smiles, some just looked him up and down like he was a new handbag Victoria had bought. Ethan forced a charming smile, but inside, he burned with shame. He knew what they were thinking. Gold digger. Toy boy. He's after her money. And the worst part was, they were right. Ethan excused himself after a while and slipped out onto the back patio. He leaned against the marble railing, staring into the night, feeling more lost than he had in years. Suddenly, he heard Victoria's voice behind him. "You're not used to these kinds of people, are you?" she said kindly. Ethan gave a hollow laugh. "Is it that obvious?" Victoria stepped beside him, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She handed him one. "I used to feel the same," she said. "When I first married my husband, everyone thought I didn't belong either. They whispered. They laughed." Ethan looked at her in surprise. "You?" She nodded, smiling sadly. "I was young once too, Ethan. I know what it feels like." For the first time, Ethan realized that maybe Victoria understood him more than he had ever realized. They stood there for a moment, clinking their glasses together softly. "To being misunderstood," Victoria said with a wink. "To proving them wrong," Ethan added, smiling back. A few nights later, something even bigger happened. Victoria invited Ethan to a candlelit dinner, just the two of them, no parties, no fancy guests. The table was set under the stars in her beautiful backyard. Soft music played from hidden speakers among the flowers. The smell of grilled steak and baked potatoes filled the air. Ethan realized, with a small shock, that he was nervous. Really nervous. Not because he had to pretend, but because, deep down, some part of him didn't want to pretend anymore. Victoria wore a simple red dress that made her look younger somehow. Her eyes sparkled under the fairy lights strung above them. They ate, they laughed, they shared stories. Then, after dessert, Victoria leaned forward, her face serious. "Ethan," she said softly, "I have something to ask you." He froze. "Would you ever consider marrying someone older?" she asked, her voice almost trembling. The air around them felt heavy. Ethan's heart pounded so loudly, he thought she could hear it. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment to seal the deal. To grab the life he had always dreamed of. He opened his mouth to say yes, to give her the answer she clearly hoped for. But then, he saw her. Really saw her. The way her hand trembled slightly as she held her glass. The way her eyes searched his face, not for power, not for status, but for something simple. Something real. Love.
Trust. Hope.
For the first time, Ethan realized this wasn't just a game to her. It wasn't just money or loneliness. It was real. And he was about to break the heart of the only person who had ever believed in him. His voice caught in his throat. He stared at her, completely torn. What do I do? He thought desperately. Do I lie? Do I take the life I want? Or do I walk away before I destroy her? Victoria waited silently, her face open, trusting. The night stretched on, the stars above them twinkling like tiny witnesses. And in that heavy silence, Ethan realized whatever choice he made tonight would change his life forever. Ethan sat frozen in his chair, staring at Victoria across the candlelit table. His heart was pounding so loudly, it almost drowned out the soft music playing in the garden. Victoria's question hung in the air, heavy and full of meaning. Would you ever consider marrying someone older? Her eyes were so full of hope, so full of trust, that Ethan felt like a knife had been pushed into his chest. This was the moment he had been planning for all along. The golden opportunity to secure a life of wealth, comfort, and power. And yet, why did it feel so wrong now? He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Victoria gave a soft, almost shy smile and reached across the table, gently placing her hand over his. Her touch was warm, trembling slightly, just like her voice. You don't have to answer right now, she said kindly. I needed you to know how I feel. Ethan swallowed hard. No, he said quickly, his voice rough. I mean yes. He stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. He had rehearsed so many speeches in his mind, but now, when it mattered most, he couldn't remember a single line. Victoria laughed softly, thinking he was just nervous. It's okay, Ethan, she said. I understand. But she didn't understand. She couldn't possibly understand the storm going on inside him. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in his tiny apartment, staring up at the cracked ceiling. The silver watch she gave him sat on his bedside table, gleaming in the moonlight like a silent reminder of the choice before him. You can have it all, a voice whispered in his head.
Money.
Status. Freedom from this miserable life. But another voice spoke too, softer but stronger. At what cost? He remembered the way Victoria laughed, the way she trusted him, the way she had looked at him like he mattered. No one had ever looked at him like that before. Ethan groaned, covering his face with a pillow. Why did it have to be her? He thought miserably. Why couldn't she just be a mean old woman I could trick and leave? But she wasn't. She was kind. She was real. And somehow, without meaning to, she had reached a part of his heart he thought was dead. The next morning, Ethan made a decision. A real decision. One that didn't come from greed, or anger, or fear. He got dressed carefully, wearing the best clothes he had. He even combed his hair 3 times, wanting to look decent. Not for her money, but for her. He drove to Victoria's mansion, his hands sweating on the steering wheel the whole way. When he arrived, Prince, the tiny, angry dog, came running out barking as usual. But this time, when Prince jumped at him, Ethan laughed and scooped him up into his arms. Hey, buddy, he said, scratching the little dog behind the ears. You're not so bad after all. Prince licked his face happily, surprising even himself. Victoria was sitting in the garden, reading a book. She looked up as Ethan walked toward her, holding Prince. Her eyes widened in surprise. You tamed him, she said, laughing. Ethan grinned nervously. Maybe he finally saw I wasn't so bad either. Victoria closed her book and smiled at him, her face calm but curious. I needed to see you, Ethan said, sitting down across from her. Of course, Victoria said gently. Is everything all right? Ethan took a deep breath. I've been thinking about what you asked me, he began. Victoria's smile faded a little, and she sat up straighter, as if bracing herself for bad news. I'm not going to lie, Ethan said honestly. At first, I was just thinking about your money. Victoria blinked, caught off guard by his raw honesty. I grew up with nothing, Ethan continued, his voice shaking slightly. I saw a chance to escape that life, and I thought marrying you would be easy." Victoria stayed silent, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "But then I got to know you," Ethan said, his voice softening. "And you weren't what I expected." He looked straight into her eyes. "You're funny. You're kind. You're amazing. And for the first time in my life, someone made me feel like I mattered." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I don't want to marry you for your money, Victoria," Ethan said firmly. "I want to marry you because I think I'm falling for you." A tear slipped down Victoria's cheek. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Victoria whispered, "You mean that?" Ethan nodded, feeling like a huge weight had lifted from his chest. "I do." Victoria stood up, walked around the table, and pulled him into a tight, trembling hug. "I was so scared," she whispered. "I thought you would say no." Ethan hugged her back, feeling a strange warmth spread through him. "I was scared too," he admitted. They pulled apart, laughing through their tears. Prince barked happily at their feet, running in circles. For the first time, Ethan wasn't thinking about money or status or anything else. He was just thinking about her. Victoria, the woman who had seen something good in him when he couldn't even see it himself. And in that moment, surrounded by the scent of roses and the soft music of the morning, Ethan realized something. He hadn't just found a way out of his old life. He had found a reason to live a new one. The sun was shining brightly on the day of the wedding. Victoria's garden had been transformed into a paradise of white roses, fairy lights, and soft music. Ethan stood at the altar, wearing a simple black suit. He felt nervous but also strangely at peace. This was not the life he had imagined for himself when he was a boy dreaming of escaping poverty. It was something better, something real. As the music began to play, all the guests turned to watch Victoria walk down the aisle. She wore a beautiful cream-colored dress, simple but elegant, and she held a small bouquet of lilies in her hands. Her face was glowing with happiness. Some guests whispered behind their hands, their faces full of shock and judgment. "He's so young. She's old enough to be his mother. He's after her money, clearly." Ethan heard the whispers, and for a moment, old shame and anger rose inside him. But then he looked at Victoria, truly looked at her, and the noise faded away. He smiled at her, the biggest, realest smile he had ever worn. And when Victoria smiled back, all the doubts, all the gossip, all the cruelty of the world melted away. The ceremony was simple and sweet. The officiant, an old family friend of Victoria's, spoke about love that knows no age, no boundary. When it was time for the vows, Ethan took a deep breath and spoke from his heart. "Victoria," he said, his voice strong, "I came into your life a broken man. I thought I was just looking for a way out of my pain. But what I found instead was a reason to live. A reason to believe again. I love you for your heart, your kindness, and your strength. I promise to stand by you, to laugh with you, to cry with you, and to walk beside you all the days of my life." Tears streamed down Victoria's cheeks. Her hands trembled as she took the ring and placed it gently on Ethan's finger. "I never believed someone like you would look at me the way you do," she said in a choked voice. "You see me, not my wrinkles, not my past, but me. I promise to love you, to support you, and to always believe in us, no matter what the world says." The officiant smiled warmly. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Ethan leaned in, and they shared their first kiss as husband and wife. It wasn't perfect like in the movies. It was real, shy, sweet, a little clumsy, but full of love. After the ceremony, the guests moved to the garden for the reception. The whispers continued, but Victoria and Ethan didn't care anymore. They danced under the fairy lights, laughing and spinning around like two teenagers in love. At one point, Ethan accidentally stepped on Victoria's foot, and she yelped. Everyone turned to look. Instead of being embarrassed, Victoria burst into laughter, and soon Ethan joined in. Their laughter was so genuine, so full of joy, that even the coldest hearts among the guests had to smile. Maybe, just maybe, some of them thought this wasn't about money after all. Maybe it was about something rarer, true love. Later that night, as they sat together under the stars, Ethan pulled something from his pocket. It was a small, rough ring. Not gold, not silver. Just a simple ring he had bought with the very first paycheck he ever earned at a restaurant years ago. "I bought this when I was 17, he said, holding it out to her. "I kept it, thinking I would give it to someone special one day. Someone who saved me." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I already have a ring," she said, smiling through her tears. "I know," Ethan said. "But this one is from my heart." Victoria held out her hand, and he slipped the old ring onto her finger. They sat there, side by side, their hands intertwined, looking up at the sky. For once, Ethan wasn't thinking about what he didn't have. He wasn't thinking about running away. He wasn't thinking about tricks or lies. He was thinking about the life they would build together. A life built not on money, but on love, trust, and second chances. And so, against all odds, against all judgment, Ethan and Victoria began a new chapter of their lives. Not as a poor boy and a rich woman. Not as a young man and an older wife. But simply as two people who found each other in a world that said they never should. And that, after all the wicked plans, all the struggles, and all the doubts, was the greatest twist of all. They found true happiness where no one believed it could exist. Together. Forever. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like, and comment what you feel about the story under the comment section. Share to friends and loved ones. Thanks for watching.